Okay, good morning, everybody. I'm Mark Miller. I'm the chairman of the Forum Committee. George Bledsoe is the technology person, which we're having great problems with again, as usual. I will be passing baskets around. I'll just keep the baskets on the same side. We don't seem to have too many people on that side anyhow. And next week, there will be an update on the campaign, and Dennis Conda will be speaking about the campaign. So, George.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to our Sunday morning forum. I'm sorry about the technicalities we've had. We're working on those, and hopefully we'll get those straightened out. I'm delighted to have President Clarence Nicholas here today. No problem. President of the NAACP Milwaukee Branch. I've been working with President Nicholas as a member of the NAACP Milwaukee Branch for about 10 plus years. Clarence Nicholas has been a mentor of mine. He's mentored me in a lot of the work that we do there, giving me inspiration and pushing me kind of along to really do more, dig deeper, that sort of thing. We're also celebrating our 100th year anniversary. There's a lot of history here in Milwaukee with the NAACP Milwaukee Branch. A lot of you may know that as well. So Mr. Nicholas is here to just kind of give us some oversights, a few things of where we've been, kind of where we are, some of the things that we're looking to go into. So thank you all so much. He may be a little bit abbreviated as far as his time, unfortunately. He has duties at his church that he has to attend, but he's here for us now. So thank you all so much for coming out. President Nicholas.
Good morning. Good morning. I guess I should say that George Bledsoe is our first vice president now. I appointed him 2 months ago. It was confirmed this month. So he's our first vice president. He might be the next person in line. All right. At any rate, my name is Clarence P. Nicholas. I'm the president of the Milwaukee Branch NAACP. But let me start with a good scripture this morning since we're in church. Micah 6:8 say, "For what does the Lord require of thee, O man? What is good, and what does the Lord require of you? But to do justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God." But there's another one that I like that helps me, and that's 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 7. "For he has not given us a spirit of fear, but a spirit of power, of love, and a sound mind." Now, I'll start a minute and tell you that I'm from Charlottesville, Virginia. You heard about Charlottesville. I'm certain all of you have. So I grew up there. 1946 is when I started in Charlottesville. So I left there when I was 19 because I turned 19 in college, but I went to Wilberforce University, first African-American school in the United States, 1856. So you know I love history. I was an undergrad of Wilberforce, K through 8, elementary education. I came here in 1970. I think I met Mr. Todd at this time too. Mr. Leon Todd, he was with the school board. At any rate, I'm also a graduate of Cardinal Stritch University, where I got my master's degree in education, and I became a principal. And I did my thesis and No Child Left Behind. Now, No Child Left Behind is reauthorization of the Elementary and Secondary School Act, 1965, Johnson's War on Poverty. And it's interesting. I'll share something with you, because under that, I was able to go to Wilberforce, and when I finished, I only owed $3,000. I was also given stipends as well as incentive dollars for doing well, because I came out of an impoverished situation. So I was eligible for title monies, and I received them. I'm going to tell you a little bit about title monies in a minute. George, would you give them a copy so they can look ahead? I got one for everybody, I think. Right here, I'll stay here, I'll stay. So with the title monies, we're eligible to help. I'll use the Milwaukee Public School System with resources, funding of many different kinds, all right? But I'm not going to stay with that yet until you get the handout that he has with the title. I'll begin to talk again about Title I. But let me say my stay with the NAACP started in 1979 with our president at the time, who was my mentor, Thomas O. Cheney, first police sergeant in African-American here in Milwaukee. I met Mr. Cheney in federal court, 1979, with the decision, Reynolds decision, Judge Reynolds, and it was the desegregation efforts in Milwaukee. Now, let me digress a minute. So as a 14-year-old, I live, as I said, in Charlottesville, Virginia. I live one block from a predominantly white high school, 10 blocks to a predominantly African-American school. So in 1961, when I had to go to high school, I decided I prefer to walk 10 blocks because so much was new with the desegregation efforts. Remember Brown versus the Board of Education? And Thurgood Marshall, whom I will show you in a minute, was the person who pleaded or argued that case in the Supreme Court. Brown versus the Board of Education has not been overturned, although it's older than Roe versus Wade, still has not been overturned. And I'm going to mention something about that as it applies to Milwaukee, right? So I was the secretary starting out. I was the education chair. Then I moved to assistant secretary. Then I became secretary. Then first vice president, now president. So I've had my stay with NAACP for a couple decades. All right? Now, the NAACP is to ensure political, social, educational, economic equality for people of color. And we do that because we are committed to nonviolence, and we rely on the press, the ballot, petition, and the courts. And that's true today. Nonetheless, I moved to our founding members. Are you able to well, first we have Ida B. Wells, the social worker, you know. Then we have W.E.B. Du Bois, who was first the head of the Niagara movement, similar to the NAACP. And that's in 1909, but in 1911, in Boston, Massachusetts, interestingly, the first branch was started in the church there. I had an opportunity last year to visit that church. Then we have Mary written, but I don't. Oh, okay. I didn't have that piece to deal with that. Next, I want to go to Thurgood Marshall. Can you get Thurgood on there? Oh, that's me. At any rate, if he pulls Thurgood up, I want to mention Thurgood at this time. You recall Thurgood argued the Brown versus the Board of Education in the Supreme Court. He was the first African American to be seated on the Supreme Court. Notice this. Thurgood argued 32 cases at the Supreme Court. How many of you think he won out of the 32? I won't give you long to think. 29. Now, that was one of the reasons why he was put on the Supreme Court. Justice Marshall. That's interesting. I won't spend any more time about Justice Marshall. Now, other than to say, it was said with the desegregation efforts, all due speed, right? Now, let me come here to Milwaukee. In Milwaukee, we had 10 plaintiffs, and I'm summarizing because I don't want to walk through the case because it's long, but in summary, 10 plaintiffs. Those 10 plaintiffs were middle-class families. The entire lawsuit was aimed at helping the lower socioeconomic African-American children that were, let's say, 30%, all right? Because the families were middle class, the case was settled out of court. Judge John W. Reynolds allowed MPS and the Milwaukee Teachers Education Association to settle. I was there working with the Honorable Lord A. Bobby. He was a federal lawyer as well as a former senator for the state of Wisconsin. He told me some harsh things that happened that as a result of him litigating. But remember now, out of court. So if you're out of court, what has happened? What did happen? Milwaukee became what is called a de facto segregated system. And de facto would mean as a matter of fact. It wasn't law. It definitely wasn't prohibited, but as a matter of fact. Now we see Milwaukee, and we see some things happening at a de facto discrimination that has to be dealt with. Now let me go back to my childhood again. Remember what I said? I walked 10 blocks because and we're in the church, so I feel comfortable talking to you about this one. At 14, I went into what's called a wood shed. We had a wood shed to chop some wood so that we could have heat in our house, right? We had an electric stove, but not the kind of heat. We didn't have that. We had a pot-belly, big stove, coal and wood. So while I was out there chopping, and I was angry, but I'm not going to tell you what I was angry about. My mom had said something to me that I didn't like. So I took my anger out chopping these big logs. First time I had chopped them, then I'd cut them up real good. They call it kindling to make fire. And a little boy said, why are you so angry? I said, uh-oh. So it set me down on one of these big logs. I sat down. What do you want? And that was my calling that I recognized. What do you want? I said, oh, goodness. I said, I don't want to go down the street to Lane, the all-white school, because I don't understand desegregation or whatever's going on. It had just started almost, right? Early 60s, okay? In our city, Milwaukee, Charlottesville. And I said, I want to be a teacher. I want to play basketball. I want to run track. But I don't want to go to that school right now. When I become adult, or when I go to after college, I'm willing to fight to make a difference. So that's my fight as president of NAACP for the future, to deal with de facto segregation. It's here and live in Milwaukee. Now, since I said here and live in Milwaukee, Mr. Bledsoe just gave you, I believe, a handout with public Title I. Title I public. Title I public. Title I public. Title I public is to assure equity in education. Why? I'm going back to the 1965 Elementary and Secondary School Act. Revised to No Child Left Behind. Then Obama, 2015, revised it again to Every Student Succeeds Act, 2015. So what you're looking at now comes under the Every Student Succeeds Act, 2015. But it's Title I. And if you look on that carefully, you have certain schools. The first school where it has types of public schools, types of public schools. You have traditional. You have the non-instrumentality charter. And then you have partnership schools. Now, we know what the traditional schools are. And I just said what they are right here now. Non-instrumentality charter schools, let me briefly say what they are. And let me also say that the union is fighting against those kinds of schools. Why? Let's say, for instance, you have a plumber's license. You have been a plumber for 20 years. I'll just say 20 years. You know the trade. You could teach kids how to be a plumber, leading them to what? An apprenticeship program. So in a non-instrumentality school, the principal could have a plumber teaching plumbing in his or her school. Same with auto mechanics, same with nursing. They're certified, they know the trade or career. They do not need a teacher's license. Well, the union said, yes, they do, or they won't teach it in school. Now we found out that an ad hoc committee of 3, Frida Webb, she's the chair of Labor and Industry. Ruth Sabrinsky was the chair years ago, and Paul Blackman, who was at A.L. Smith, he was the president of the union. They wrote a book, A Dream Deferred. That book is coming out within the next couple weeks. They have ad hoc committees to look into what I'm talking about, non-instrumentality in a sense of having plumbers, having different skilled tradesmen come into schools and teach kids skilled trades. It's not happening now, right? It never did happen. It happened on a lesser scale. But we see kids now, and we see many of the people retiring from skilled trades in the industry. And we have a lack of apprenticeships. And the apprenticeship trades is falling. So those are some things to look at that we're trying to help improve in terms of our Milwaukee branch. And let me go a little further and to say this. In 1963, and we'll stay with where we are with NAACP, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King declared education, employment, housing, healthcare, and social justice to be the 5 essentials to a healthy community. So he said if one, just one is missing, that community or society is not healthy. All right? So let me go back. I talked to you about non-instrumentality, the second one. Now I'm going to the third, a partnership school. I was able to work with MPS, and Mary was with the Next Door Foundation when I worked with them, and we created what was called Cornerstone Achievement Academy, a partnership school. What did that school do? We contracted with MPS for 100 students to serve. Those 100 students were at-risk students, meaning they missed too many days out of school in a given year. They were teen parents. They were members of youth gangs, or they were behind, in most instances, 3 or more grades in terms of English, math, science, etc., in academics. Plus, they were 14 to 22. We allowed them to be in our population. We had a lot of success with them. 80% often graduates, etc. In that setting, I witnessed what is called Title I resources that were able to help us to work with those students. A good example was the Cisco computers. They had every subject. You could come in and you might be 3rd grade, but if you stayed in reading with the Cisco computers, because everything diagnostically that happened with that computer in your brain was programmed and diagnosed, and they give you diagnostic studies to look at to build your reading level. Many of the kids went to college level, but we also were allowed with English, algebra, reading to give kids a credit or half a credit, quarter credit, when they did well based on the computer outlay and everything's there with the strands, with everything there showing as if the teacher had kept notes, anecdotal notes, etc., to show that that kid had progressed. That's not being used widely. And we used that before 2009. It's interesting, isn't it? However, 2009, because it wasn't used widely, all the schools could have done it. But because I was interested in what I said, helping the school system and the kids, these are at-risk kids. I had taught 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, open classroom at the old Jackie Robinson School. Kids weren't coming back saying, will you come to my graduation? I was wondering what was going on. So then I moved out. Even though I was attached to Jackie Robinson, I was working with the Next Door Foundation, trying to bring kids back, bring them back into the classroom. Remember, teen parents, youth gangs, etc. So a blessing I had to do that. That worked. But now let me go a little further and tell you what my goal is with the NAACP. Because I have an interest in the school system as well as those 5 areas, don't forget, education, employment, housing, healthcare, and social justice. I created what is called the Honorable Lord A. Bobby Foundation, Inc. Are you able to pull it up, George? If you're not, I have what the possibilities of in terms of helping the indigent, the poor, the disfranchised, and the needy. Well, briefly, I'll just say we want to do clinics 2 days a week, Monday and Friday, because we're off on Monday and Friday. You'll be surprised at the complaints that the NAACP get from people who are poor, indigent, disfranchised. Coming in, the courts have given them mandates. They have no clue what they are. No clue. And they need help. Pro bono lawyers are 1 in 10 now, if we can find them, if we can find them. So you see the need for the disfranchised, the poor, the needy, is wide open now in need of help. So what we are looking at also, if we looked at education, go back to education, we're looking at disparities, the various disparities. Say, for instance, I'll give you a good example. Violations of standards set, showing that Act 10, Section 3 is not operating. What is Act 10, Section 3? Here we go. All school districts are to be administered as uniformly as practicable. That's the legal part, practical. Our Milwaukee public school system is not being administered as uniform as practical. And when I talk about the de facto discrimination, notice this: a school on the south side, a school on the north side. Who do you think gets the most resources in the funding? School on the south side, or the east side, but not on the west side. I'll give you one more example. You have the North Division High School. It has several feeder schools, 1 middle school, and a partnership school there. It's the most impoverished school district in Milwaukee. School District 4. It has the most students in any school district in Milwaukee. It gets the less money. Isn't that interesting? But here's what we're doing now. We had a meeting just on the 25th. We invited the community as much as we could. We had a decent showing. 2 older persons were there. One older person was there in person. The other older person sent someone, so I'm saying 2, to represent him. Here's what we asked. How many schools are in your district? One older person was there, said 20. And I said, how are they doing? You know what they said? She said, I really don't look at it. But these are your constituents' children. And we've seen some awful things that have happened recently. We're now in a search for a new superintendent. But we also see that the aldermanic people, Common Council and the mayor, are not paying attention to our children. One other one, K-3. We lost the Title I funding. 4 violations, 4 different school violations caused almost 67 schools to lose funding. Those 4 schools could have been dealt with, closed even in terms of that program. But they took the funding away. Then I investigated, and I was told everything was done online, nothing personal. Couldn't there have been an emergency where you call on the community, or you called on the council, or you called on the committee of Title I people for the state? Well, that wasn't done, and we didn't have time. The administration decided, didn't even tell the board to do this. So those are some things, that's one, talking violations. But we're looking at disparities disparities in education, disparities in employment, disparities in housing, disparities in healthcare, disparities in social justice. Let me just give you one in social justice because my time is not allowing me to go further, too much further. We're witnessing what it was called, or has been called since 2003, truth in sentencing for prison. Now, you know our prison population is just overwhelming as far as inmates. Most of them are African American, all people of color. Nonetheless, in truth in sentencing, if you violate a technical parole mandate, you could be sent back to prison for 18 months if you came after 2003. No matter how well you're doing in the community, doesn't matter if you have a family, etc. A parole officer said, you are not to be drinking alcohol. We took a urine test, and there was alcohol there. You have 18 months in prison. Now notice this, if you were in prison before 2003, you come under the regular sentencing. And the regular sentencing said you were given 40 years. You got out 28, good behavior. You have alcohol in your urine. The mandate said you're not to be drinking. You signed that, remember? That's how you got out. You now go back and serve the rest of your time, no matter how well you've been doing. We're looking at that now in the penal system. The governor says he wants to abolish it. Our city attorney, Evan Gorky, he's now our city attorney. He was once a state senator, a state representative. He was in favor of abolishing it, and he's still in favor of abolishing it, but it's still in place. So we're seeing our marginal adults and young people having to deal with that type of behavior with the penal system. And it's making money, big money, big money. And it takes what? About $50,000 a year to keep a person in prison. It only takes about $13,000 to educate a person. It's almost like where are most of our children going, remember? Apprentices are not there. Every kid is not going to college. So we're looking at those kinds of things. It's mind-boggling, but it has to be dealt with. With the Bobby Foundation, getting lawyers, getting people, making the community aware, I'm certain we can curb the disparities that's going on now. Now, the first vice president, I'll put him, okay, I'll use that in just a moment. He said we have what is called our 100th anniversary, October 18th. It's going to be at the Barrett Center. We were fortunate, and I say fortunate, I better give credit where credit is due. My wife has been helping since 2010 as the chairperson of the Freedom Fund Dinner Committee. We were fortunate to get our House Minority Speaker, Hakeem Jeffries, to be our guest speaker. Now, you know that's a boost for us, right? Because we don't have to pay him. That's a boost. So he has some information about Hakeem coming, as well as if you wish to help in any way, you wish to buy a ticket, you wish to buy a table, or you wish to do an ad, any of those things, we'll appreciate it. I thank you. I hope I was able to give you something.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah. I was wondering if you had just a few moments, President Nicholas, if maybe we had a question.
I'll take it. I'll give you a few. Can I give
know
you
that
5?
most of you
Can I
are.
give you 5?
Yeah.
I can make it where I need to go, I think, in 5 minutes.
Okay. Did anyone have?
Oh,
a
I can be
particular
10,
question?
5 minutes late, whichever way. Questions, anybody? Good one. That's what we are. We're fighting with our economic committee. We have 24 committees, standing committees. But the economic committee along with labor and industry is working to try and combat the disparities that you're talking about. I also said that Peter Webb, Chair of Labor and Industry, Ruth Zabernsky, and Paul Blackman, they wrote a book, and you can see some of the things that needs to happen or be challenged to make a difference in that book. Yes. At the Barrett Center, 4th and Wisconsin, 4th and Wisconsin Avenue. Oh, yes. Yeah, Barrett. You can have it. That's interesting. It's interesting. We're moving in that direction. And George can tell you about that because he's working with the youth. He's one of the youth advisors. However, Fred Reed, one of the sergeants in the commander, is one of my advisors. All right? So, thank you.
Just a brief word on that, Bruce. That is one of the things that we are looking to do is rejuvenate our youth council. As many of you know, the youth council with the fair housing marches, that sort of thing, was the integral part. They're, of course, connected to the Milwaukee branch. However, it was the youth council and Val Phillips that was doing most of the work. So we are actually looking at that. As President Nicholas said, I'm working with our new youth advisor. We're looking to reinvigorate our youth council. So if any of you know of any kids that may be interested in that sort of thing, definitely send them my way. And just another word as far as our Freedom Fund dinner on October 18th, correct, at the Barrett Center. Feel free to get any information that you may need with that. The price is $125.
125.
That does it. 125.
125 per ticket.
$125 per ticket.
Per table of 8.
Right. So that $125 does include a 1-year membership, and you can use that for yourself, or you can gift that to someone. For instance, if you did know a child that you may think that might be interested, you may gift that to them or to yourself. So plenty of opportunities there. We look forward to having you all there if we can. If you have any other?
I think you've been so timid. But I do need to run.
All right.
I might be able to make it, but I can be 5 minutes late.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you all for coming. I do apologize for the issues in the beginning.